Think about the absolute most like frustrating part of your week.
Oh, man.
Right. Maybe it was a flat tire when you were already running late, or a piece of genuinely harsh feedback you received at work, or even just, an endless cold you can't seem to shake.
Yeah, the everyday friction.
Exactly. But what if that annoyance, that friction, isn't an obstacle at all? What if it's actually functioning exactly like a thorn on a rose bush?
I mean, that completely shifts the paradigm, doesn't it? Suddenly you aren't just enduring this random string of bad luck. You're actually engaging with a deliberate mechanism. You're trying to read it.
Yes. And that is exactly what we're doing today. Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are exploring a profoundly paradigm-shifting document today called Essay 23, Intrinsic Beauty and Beauty by Outcome.
It's a fascinating piece of writing.
It really is. The core premise here reframes how we look at pain, hardship, and the seemingly random events of our daily lives. Life is presented not as this meaningless exhibition where things just happen to you, but as a silent commentary.
A commentary that is actively waiting to be interpreted.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to take the insights from this essay and help you transition from being a passive spectator who just consumes events to an active student in the school of existence.
Well, to do that, before we can begin interpreting that silent commentary, we have to completely overhaul our definition of the word beautiful.
Okay, unpack that for me.
So the author draws this really stark line between two distinct categories of beauty, starting with intrinsic beauty.
Okay.
This refers to things that are beautiful in their absolute essence, without needing any secondary justification. So things like compassion, truthfulness, mercy, love, gratitude.
Universally good things.
Exactly. They're ends in themselves. I mean, love is beautiful simply because its fundamental nature is beautiful.
It's kind of like walking into a museum and standing in front of a finished masterpiece. You don't have to understand the chemistry of the paint or the history of the artist to know it has value. You just appreciate it for exactly what it is right in that moment.
That's a great way to put it. But, and here's the catch, this intrinsic beauty completely falls apart when it's faced with the harsh realities of daily life.
Right, because life isn't always a museum.
Exactly, which is where the second category comes in, and that is beauty by outcome. And this is the agonizing, messy, frustrating process of actually learning how to paint the masterpiece.
So what does that look like in practice?
Well, beauty by outcome covers all the experiences that, at first glance anyway, appear entirely unpleasant or even hurtful. Illness, trials, loss, discipline, harsh criticism.
The thorns.
Right. Outwardly, these things seem antagonistic. The surgical incision is the classic metaphor the text uses here.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the cut of a scalpel violates the body, right? It causes bleeding, requires a painful recovery, but the deliberate outcome of that cut is healing.
Or consider winter.
Exactly. Winter's another great example.
The bitter, freezing temperatures strip the trees bare, and they kill off all the surface vegetation, yet that deep freeze is the biological prerequisite for the earth to generate spring.
Perfectly said.
I am struggling a bit with the mechanics here, though.
How so?
Well, it feels a bit like we're being asked to, gaslight ourselves into enjoying a root canal or a corporate layoff. I mean, is the argument actually that we are supposed to celebrate the pain of a profound loss just because it might build character down the line? That sounds pretty detached from human reality.
Yeah, no, I get that. But no, the text absolutely does not ask us to celebrate the pain itself. I mean, the scalpel doesn't suddenly feel like a gentle massage just because it's a surgery, right?
Right, it still hurts.
It still hurts. The distinction lies in the two ways we process experience. The author calls them the superficial gaze and the wise gaze.
Okay, superficial gaze being what?
That gaze only measures the immediate sensory or emotional feedback. So if it stings, it's inherently bad. If it tastes sweet, it's inherently good. The author actually calls loving only what is intrinsically pleasant, a childish way to navigate the world.
Oh, wow. Because it demands a life completely devoid of any growth or friction.
Exactly. You can't grow without friction. So the wise gaze, on the other hand, looks at the trajectory. If the pain of an illness forces you to, say, reevaluate your priorities.
Or the devastation of a failure produces a better work ethic.
Right. If it produces a deeper sense of empathy, then the process itself becomes wise. True maturity is accepting what becomes beautiful through its result.
So you move from complaint to gratitude. Not because the pain was fun, but because the transformation it yielded is invaluable.
You make peace with the mechanism that transforms you. That's the key.
Making peace with the mechanism that transforms you. I love that. And to ground this abstract philosophy into a concrete image, there's this narrative tucked into the essay about a young boy named Ali.
Yes, the rose garden story.
Right. So Ali goes with his grandfather to visit this vibrant ancient rose garden. He's completely mesmerized by the colors and the scent, just wishing the whole world could be made of soft petals. And then, as happens when you grab at rose bushes, he gets pricked by a sharp thorn.
And his immediate reaction is the pure embodiment of that superficial gaze we just talked about.
Yeah, he recoils, he starts crying, and he essentially demands to know why thorns even exist. He just wants to eradicate the pain to leave only the intrinsic beauty.
But his grandfather kneels down and completely reframes the boy's reality. He explains that if thorns were eradicated, people and animals would just pluck the roses carelessly.
The flowers would be devoured or trampled in a matter of days.
Exactly. Without that sharp deterrent, the garden would be utterly barren. The thorn is beautiful by its outcome because its entire existence is dedicated to protecting the rose.
And then they see the tree, right?
Yeah, the grandfather reinforces this lesson a few minutes later when they walk past a tree that appears entirely dead and withered.
And Ollie just dismisses it. He assumes its life is over.
But the grandfather tells him to wait. And when they return to the garden weeks later, that same withered, brittle tree has sprouted bright green shoots.
The cold, seemingly destructive winter wasn't an enemy trying to kill the tree. It was the mechanism preparing the wood to support new life.
Right, which culminates in the grandfather delivering this absolute gut punch of a lesson. She says, not every pain is an enemy, and not every comfort is a friend.
Wow.
Yeah. Ollie realizes that to survive in the garden, you have to love the roses, but you must fundamentally understand the thorns.
Love the roses, understand the thorns. That's incredible. But let's unpack the mechanics of that phrase for a second.
Sure.
If a literal thorn protects a literal rose from being carelessly destroyed, what are our personal everyday thorns actually protecting within us? Like when you get that flat tire or that bruising performance review, what delicate part of your character is being shielded?
Well, the text suggests that those daily hardships are protecting our capacity for depth.
Capacity for depth.
Yeah. I mean, think about it. If we lived in a reality with zero friction, where every desire was met with immediate, comfortable gratification, we would live entirely one-dimensional lives.
We'd be completely hollow.
Right. We would just consume experiences without ever developing resilience or patience or profound empathy for others who suffer. The thorns prevent us from remaining superficial. They protect our potential to become fully realized human beings.
Okay, so if the thorns are a deliberate language, like you said earlier, a commentary waiting to be read, how do we actually translate them?
That's where the text introduces a really powerful framework. It asserts that the universe communicates through three distinct languages known as the three mirrors of truth.
The three mirrors of truth. Okay, what's the first one?
The first is the mirror by identity, or Ainila in the original text. This is the concept of a cosmic, infallible record. It's the promise of divine justice where things are returned to you exactly as they are.
As they are.
Yeah. So in this framework, not a single particle of matter, not a whispered word, not a fleeting intention or a hidden glance is ever lost. They don't just dissolve into nothingness.
Wait, hold on. If every single fleeting thought or mistake I make is permanently woven into the fabric of reality, that doesn't make me feel serious. That makes me feel completely paralyzed.
Intense, yeah.
I mean, if memory isn't just neurons firing in my brain, but an inescapable physical record in the universe, that sounds like a recipe for crushing permanent guilt.
Yeah.
How does anyone function under that kind of surveillance?
It feels paralyzing if you view it purely as a mechanism for punishment. But the text frames it as the ultimate law of responsibility.
Okay, how so?
Think of it like the conservation of energy in physics. Right? Energy cannot be created or destroyed, it only transforms. The mirror of identity applies that exact same physical law to human morality and action.
Oh, I see.
If you speak a harsh word to someone, the sound waves might dissipate in seconds, but the psychological impact on that person and the way they subsequently treat the next person they meet, that creates a permanent ripple in the timeline.
So it forces an immense weight onto our daily choices. It's asking that constant question, what did I sow and what am I reaping?
Yeah.
It really grounds us in the reality of our past.
Yes, but, and this is crucial, the genius of this framework is that the mirror of humanity is never meant to be looked at in isolation.
Okay.
The heavy anchor of the past is immediately counterbalanced by the second mirror, which is the mirror by likeness. If identity secures our responsibility, likeness secures our hope.
And this connects directly back to the dead tree in Ollie's story, right?
Exactly. Likeness points to the repeated cyclical miracles embedded in nature.
The dry, cracked earth coming alive in the spring, or a branch that just looked like dead firewood suddenly bursting into pink blossoms.
The text actually argues that every single spring is a literal biological likeness of resurrection. It operates as physical proof that the power required to revive a dormant seed is the exact same power that can revive a human spirit.
Wow. So the universe is constantly demonstrating that renewal is possible.
Constant reminders.
A career that feels like a dead end is just experiencing winter. A broken relationship or a lost hope can be restored. The mirror of likeness aligns completely with the future.
And you can see why the tension between these two mirrors is absolutely vital. You literally cannot have one without the other.
Right. Because identity grounds us so we don't become careless. We have to own our ripple effects.
Yes, but likeness frees us from despair. It proves that no winter is permanent. If you only had hope without responsibility, you'd become entitled and reckless.
And if you only had responsibility without hope, you would be crushed by the weight of your own mistakes.
Exactly. They're two halves of the same engine.
Okay, so identity manages the past, likeness manages the future. But, and maybe this is just me, that leaves a massive, agonizing gap in the middle.
The present.
Yes. How does this framework help us survive the immediate, painful present? When you were sitting in the middle of a crisis, the fact that you caused it, or the fact that spring might eventually come, well, that doesn't stop it from hurting right now.
That is a very fair point, and it's exactly where the third mirror comes in. The text calls this the most subtle door of understanding. The mirror, by contrast.
Contrast.
Yeah, this mirror deals exclusively with how we perceive value in our present reality.
Contrast is the mechanism of perception.
Exactly. We only truly know the value of light by comparing it to darkness. We only comprehend the luxury of a deep breath after we've suffered through a respiratory illness. Justice is only fully legible when placed against the dark backdrop of oppression.
So our brains are literally wired for this. You just can't perceive a continuous state.
You can't.
It actually reminds me of the mechanics of noise-canceling headphones.
Oh, that's an interesting analogy.
Right, like when you're sitting on an airplane, the roar of the jet engine is absolutely deafening. But after 20 minutes, your brain just tunes it out into this dull hum. You forget it's even there.
You normalize it.
Exactly. And you only realize how violent and aggressive that noise was the exact second you flip the switch on the headphones and hear absolute, startling silence. The contrast creates the reality.
That's spot on. The text is arguing that we literally cannot perceive the reality of our health or our comfort without the stark contrast of our illness or our pain.
So it's a necessary baseline.
Yes. And the author takes this physical law of contrast and applies it directly to our internal psychology, particularly our insecurities.
Okay.
There are two statements here that basically act as a masterclass in reframing self-worth. The first one is, helplessness is not weakness, it is a mirror. And the second, need is not deficiency, it is direction.
Wait, need is not deficiency, it is direction. That is mind-blowing because we spend massive amounts of energy trying to hide the things we lack.
Oh, absolutely.
We view our inadequacies, our need for help, or our moments of utter confusion as these fundamental failures of character.
We view them as empty voids that prove we aren't good enough. But the mirror of contrast argues that the deeper your need, the firmer your connection can be to a source of strength.
How does that work in real time?
Well, if you are working on a project and you feel completely overwhelmed and helpless, that feeling isn't a character flaw, it is a compass.
A compass.
Yeah, the inadequacy is pointing you toward the exact area where you must grow or the exact person you need to ask for help, thereby forging a new connection you never would have made if you were completely self-sufficient.
So opposites are not in conflict, they are in completion.
Exactly.
The night isn't fighting a war against the day. The night is the necessary condition that gives birth to the dawn.
That's beautifully put. And to synthesize how these three mirrors operate together within a single human life, the text offers this profound visual metaphor.
I love a good metaphor. Let's hear it.
It describes the sun shining in the sky, and down on the dirt there is a tiny jagged shard of broken glass.
Okay, let's really look at the optics of that glass shard. It's incredibly small. Maybe it's been stepped on. Its edges are sharp and irregular. It's just lying in the mud.
Right. And yet, when the light hits it at the exact right angle, that tiny fragment captures a perfect reflection of a star that is 93 million miles away.
Even though the shard obviously does not contain the sun.
Right, it could never hold that much heat or mass.
Right.
But it perfectly reflects the sun's qualities, its light, its brilliance, its geometry.
So the text is saying that the human being is that jagged shard of glass.
Yes. We are intensely limited, we're broken, we're restricted by time and our physical bodies, and we are full of inadequacies. Yet, despite all those limitations, our consciousness is capable of reflecting the infinite, provided we angle ourselves toward the right source.
And we adjust that angle by actively using the 3 mirrors in our daily lives.
You've got it. When you experience a moment of friction, you run it through the framework. You reflect identity by taking absolute responsibility for your part in the situation.
You reflect likeness by maintaining the hope that this winter will yield to a spring.
And you reflect contrast by recognizing that your current state of helplessness is just highlighting the exact shape of the strength you need to acquire.
Wow. So tomorrow, when you get that piece of harsh feedback at work, or you encounter a frustrating roadblock that totally ruins your schedule, instead of just emotionally reacting with that superficial gaze, you can stop and ask 3 diagnostic questions.
Exactly.
What truth is this showing me directly about my past actions? That's identity. Second, what good news or future renewal is this resembling? That's likeness. And third, what internal deficiency is this contrast revealing? And what direction is it pointing me toward?
Running those 3 diagnostics moves you from being a passive victim of your circumstances to an active reader of your reality. You stop viewing life as a chaotic sequence of random accidents, and you start experiencing it as a highly structured, purposeful education. You mature.
It basically takes the chaos out of the friction. The ultimate takeaway from this essay is that existence is a school, and every single event is a curriculum. Through the mirror of identity, we learn to recognize justice. Through the mirror of likeness, we learn to recognize mercy. And through the mirror of contrast, we learn to recognize wisdom. And all of these different reflections, whether they come from a place of joy or a place of deep pain, ultimately turn toward the exact same source of meaning.
It's a framework that demands a lot of patience, I won't lie. I mean, it is much easier to just complain about the thorn. But this perspective offers a depth of peace and resilience that constantly chasing immediate comfort will just never provide.
It completely changes the landscape. Well, we've explored some heavy, transformative mechanics today, from the illusion of intrinsic beauty in a flawless world, down to the jagged glass shard reflecting the sun. But I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over as you navigate the rest of your week.
Let's hear it.
The text establishes that your need is not a flaw, it is a direction. It proves that the entire purpose of the painful thorn is protection. So the next time you encounter a thorn in your life, a moment of intense frustration, an unexpected failure, or a deep, uncomfortable sense of helplessness, instead of immediately complaining and asking the universe how to remove it, what if you stopped and asked, what delicate part of my character is this thorn trying to protect?